just a little bit more about what I do. So again, I mentioned I've been in the public health nonprofit sector for all of my career. And 10 years ago, I started my own business, and it's gone by different names, but it's Live Work Well is what it is now. And I work with both individuals as well as organizations. And so I offer workplace wellness services to organizations, not only nonprofits, but that's my focus because that's my passion and where, what the work I know best. But I also offer health and nutrition coaching as well as EFT tapping sessions. And just a quick commercial, I'll be back next month in May to do an EFT tapping workshop, to how to use it for stress reduction and self-care. So if you all want to come back for that, you're more than welcome. So let's dive into today's topic. So we're going to be exploring how nonprofit organizational culture can be both positive and negative in terms of its impact on stress, burnout, compassion fatigue. But it could also help enhance employee well-being. And I know that's what you're all here to learn about, is like, how can we do this? How can you as nonprofit leaders not only support yourself, but support your teams so they don't burn out? We're going to actually practice a couple of simple stress reduction modalities. And I intentionally chose things that you can easily incorporate, not just into your workday for yourself, but that you can incorporate into your team meetings, so that you normalize stress reduction within your organizational culture. And then we're going to discuss ways that nonprofit organizations can support employee well-being. Continue. So I want to highlight that things have really changed since the pandemic. And in terms of the current workplace landscape, there's a lot of concern around mental health. And then when we bring it to the level of nonprofit organizations, about 50% say they're experiencing high levels of burnout. And the turnover rate for nonprofits is 19% compared to 12% for the overall labor market. That the work can be very rewarding. And, we went into this field or this sector because we're passionate and we want to make a difference, but it can also take a toll on us, which is why it is so important for us to figure out a way to prioritize our self-care and reflect on how the organizational culture, policies, practices can support it as well. What is burnout? There's the definition by the World Health Organization, but the way I like to define it is that it's a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion from too many demands, too few resources, and too little recovery time. And when you think about that, that almost sounds like the definition of working at a nonprofit. I mean, I hate to say that, and I hope nobody takes offense to that, but let's face it, we wear, I think somebody mentioned, wearing multiple hats, right? We have to take on various roles because very often we are under-resourced in nonprofit, and we sometimes work long hours, or we just don't have enough downtime or rest time, especially, for leaders, because I think that there's laws that have gotten a little bit tighter in terms of employee, like exempt versus non-exempt, where those who are non-exempt do have to limit their hours or be paid overtime. But for those of us who are salaried employees, it's so normal to work long hours. And then compassion fatigue, to differentiate it from burnout, although there's a lot of overlap between the two, because it's also physical and emotional exhaustion, but it's not coming so much from the level of work or the bureaucracy or the interpersonal challenges that can contribute to burnout, but it's more from regularly witnessing or listening to difficult or traumatic stories. So particularly for those who are working directly with clients and community members, and you're hearing or witnessing just, their trauma, their challenges, and as some of you touched upon, the communities are just so vulnerable, or I think high need is the term that somebody used, that can really take a toll. And so the outcome of this, of experiencing burnout and compassion fatigue, can be that we have less motivation, we have less energy, obviously. It could breed negativity. It could reduce our productivity, and it can lead to feelings of resentment and hopelessness. I think it's really important to be aware of what are the signs of burnout and compassion fatigue. And I obviously already touched on some of those, but here are a few others for yourself and for the people that you work with. Now that we've like discussed the problem, which can feel heavy, right? And we can start to feel it in our body, let's do a little bit of stress reduction. So we're going to do the 4-7-8 breathing technique. Basically, what it is inhaling for 4 seconds, holding our breath for 7 seconds, and then exhaling for 8. The other aspects of it is that, of course, we're going to do deep breathing from our belly as opposed to from our chest, because when we're stressed, when we're in fight or flight, we tend to take shorter, more shallow breaths from the chest. And so when we deepen our breath, do belly breathing, then it sends a calming signal to our nervous system. The other part of this particular technique that is a little bit different from other breathing techniques, because there's lots of them out there. There's box breathing, there's alternate nasal, nostril breathing, and all of them have value. I like this one because I think it's very relaxing. But the other aspect of it is that you're going to put the tip of your tongue on your palate, right before your top teeth start. So keep your tongue in that spot throughout the exercise. But before we actually do it, I'm going to invite everybody to put one hand on their chest, another one on your belly. Initially, let's just notice our breath. So don't try to change it, but just notice how you're breathing and kind of pay attention to where do you feel your breath the most? Do you feel it like you feel your chest rising before your belly, or do you feel your belly inflating more than your chest? Start to deepen your breath, and it can help if you blow out all the air first so that you're emptying your belly, and then start to fill up your belly like a balloon as you inhale, so you kind of get used to that belly breathing first. Inflating the belly as you inhale and deflating it as you exhale. I'll guide you through it, counting for you. Go ahead and inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now you might want to take a deep cleansing breath. How did that feel? Does your body feel any different? This is particularly helpful, like when you're going to go to sleep at night. It helps your body relax, may help you fall asleep more quickly. But the other thing to know about this technique is that when you double the exhale, it's more relaxing, because there's a difference between fight and flight versus freeze. When we're in fight and flight, we're more mobilized for energy. Our bodies want to do something to protect us because we perceive we're under threat. When we believe like, okay, there's nothing I can do, I can't run away and I can't fight off this threat, we go into freeze, which is more like overwhelm, more of a shutdown. And so we're less mobilized. We have less energy in the system. So when you're more like in fight or flight, doubling the exhale is helpful. When you're more in freeze mode, you're procrastinating, maybe you feel down, depressed, having a hard time taking action, then you want to do 1-to-1 breathing, meaning in for 4, out for 4. And because that brings more energy into the system. Move on to talk a little bit about why nonprofit work can put us at greater risk of burnout and compassion fatigue. again, we're passionate about the work that we do. We want to make a difference in the world, and that's why we choose these careers. It's kind of like a double-edged sword where it's rewarding. We feel good about being able to make a difference, but then, we may not take as good care of ourselves as we need to be able to continue doing that important work in the community. A workplace that values emotional and psychological well-being is a priority, even sometimes over salary and benefits. So I also want to share this resource with you from the U.S. Surgeon General. It's their framework for workplace mental health and well-being, which I just really love this because I think it just speaks to what we would need to do. And this might be a little bit aspirational because we're not going to necessarily get to this place right away, but we need to, to start to take baby steps in this direction, because their framework centers worker voice and equity. And it has these 5 different components. And then each of the components is grounded in human needs. And I think it's important to recognize that we're not just workers, we're not robots, as much as AI has become such a thing, but we're still humans and we have needs. And those needs don't go away, or they're not put on hold when we step into work, right? We're still human beings at work. And so just to briefly review this, is one component is protection from harm. And I think this really speaks to the importance of having a psychologically safe workplace. And that's something that a lot of workers want. They want to be able to speak up, to voice their concerns without retaliation, without being treated differently, without being judged. That doesn't mean that everything that is suggested needs to be implemented, but you want to be able to feel safe voicing how you feel and voicing your concerns. And then there's connection and community, because as human beings, we're social creatures. We're wired for connection, and we want to feel like we belong. And some of you spoke to that, and that's what you feel your organization does well in terms of valuing employee well-being, right? And collaboration, teamwork, plays into this as well. And then the third component is work-life harmony. We sometimes refer to work-life balance. I really prefer the term work-life harmony because I think that's more relevant in today's workforce, because we don't necessarily, just because with technology, we're much more connected. And so we often work from home or we're hybrid. And so it's more about like this dance between our work and our life. And especially for those of us who do this kind of work in the nonprofit sector, it's often very much a part of who we are. So it's not like, going into a factory and making whatever, and then you leave there and you definitely want to leave the work at work, right? With us, it's okay for there to be a little bit more harmony, but sometimes there also needs to be boundaries and balance. But either way, it's about autonomy and flexibility, which I think a lot of workers really value these days. And having, policies around, flex time or working from home and hybrid, all of that can play a role with that. And the fourth component is mattering at work. And that's everything from getting paid a living wage and having a say in decisions at times, where there is some recognition of the employee and the work that they do, helping the employees connect what they do as individual workers to the mission of the organization. And then the fifth is opportunities for growth. Workers want to be able to keep learning, so staff development and opportunities for advancement are really important. I think it's also important to think about team care. So some of what I'm going to cover now, is about what the organization can do to support both self-care and team care. Talk a little bit about organizational culture, because sometimes there's the formal policies that can be in place. We also need to really consider the fact that there can be unwritten norms within an organization and expectations that are sometimes unspoken, but we all pick up on them, we feel them. Staff will look to their leaders, to their managers, to see what they're doing. And so it's important for us to really be mindful of the fact that if we're leaders, we're influencing. I think that any change always starts with reflecting on, well, where are we now? And so here's some questions for reflection in terms of assessing your work culture and your practices. What healthy behaviors are you modeling as a leader? So just some reflective questions. And I want to highlight a freebie that I have available to you all on my website, which is Burnout Prevention Workplace Self-Care Assessment for Leaders. So it's similar to the questions I was just asking, but it's a little bit a deeper assessment for yourself, for how you're taking care of yourself, and then how you're supporting your team. So I'd encourage you to go to my website, which is live-workwell.com, and it's there on the homepage. You have to scroll down just a tad, and then you put in your email, and you can receive this free download, which I think you'll find helpful. Well, let's do some just really quick stretching, because I think this is something else that can be easily incorporated into your workday for yourself and in meetings. So it could just be as simple as, yep, Alex started doing it, simple as head rolls, do a couple in one direction, a couple in the other direction. Rolling the shoulders. Maybe a lot of us tend to hold tension in our neck and shoulders, and we're in front of computers for so many hours. And I know for me, I ended up experiencing frozen shoulder, I think, from just the tension and stress and so many hours in front of the computer. Speaking of computer, we can do some stretches to avoid carpal tunnel. We can put one hand out with the other, just gently pull back and hold. We're not going to hold as long as you normally would, which would be about 10 seconds, but I just want to demonstrate. Then we point the fingers down and gently pull back for another 10 seconds. We would do that on the other side. But let's also do just like a side bend. We can just bend, do a side bend in our chairs. One direction, then the other. Lastly, we can do a chair twist. So we can put one hand on your arm rest and the other on the back and just turn all the way around. Or a chair twist rather, and then twist in the other direction. That helps, get some of that tension out of the lower back. So hopefully you stretched along with me and your body feels a little bit better. And let's move on. So I want to mention 3 ways to support employee well-being. One is stress reduction. The next one is work-life harmony. And lastly, workplace wellness. So let me just share a bit, some tips. So in terms of stress reduction, I like to suggest incorporating some of these things into your team meetings, whether it's check-ins, like the one-on-one check-ins that we were talking about, but also taking stretch breaks during meetings. And they don't have to be chair stretches. We can stand up and just do some stretching in the, at the beginning of the meeting, middle, the end, whatever works best for you. Deep breathing exercises. I know I've worked in workplaces where, going back to the check-in actually, where at the beginning of the meeting, everybody goes around and checks in, and you could be done on a, how are you feeling on a scale of 0 to 10? Or, other ways to do it. But I think it can be done we have one-on-one check-ins, but we can do group check-ins in meetings as well, is the point that I wanted to make. Some meditation, if there's somebody on your team who feels comfortable leading, a brief guided meditation, or doing walking meetings so that we're not sitting so many hours, which, can be really harmful for our physical health. And then in terms of work-life balance, again, going back to assessing what are your organizational policies and practices. Are the workloads reasonable? And I know within nonprofits that this isn't always, as doable as we as managers would like, because of funding limitations. But, doing the best that you can to assess and figure out like what you're able to do to make them as reasonable as possible. Ensuring that people take breaks and time off. Some organizations block out times for focused work, like meaning limit how many meetings, because, Lord knows, especially during the pandemic, people were experiencing Zoom fatigue, right? And so like having back-to-back meetings, which we often do, can be challenging, not only because we feel like, well, when do I have time to get the work done? But it can also be just kind of emotionally exhausting. And then boundaries related to our hours, to, again, workload, to communication on evenings and weekends. So again, technology can be that double-edged sword where it enhances our ability to stay on top of things and communicate, but we need to set boundaries with that as well. And so if you don't already have policies around what are the expectations, I think it's important to figure those out and communicate them so that there are clear expectations. And just one little tip, if you are a manager and if you're like sometimes working at night, which can be part of the work-life harmony, especially if, let's say, you have young kids and during the workday, sometimes you have to take time off to go to their school events or things like that. You might, want to make or need to make up the time in the evening, and you might be composing emails. Well, don't hit send or schedule them, I guess is what I'm trying to say, so that the employee receives them the next morning and not in the evening. So things like that, so that the employee doesn't feel like, oh, I guess there's an expectation that I'd be working in the evening. And then going back to the whole issue around flexible work arrangements, not just with hours, but with work location, whether you're remote, hybrid, etc. And but speaking of that, it's important to be mindful when you do have people working from home, because some of the research is showing that because you're less visible, you may be feeling the need to work even harder, which can ultimately contribute to burnout because the lines get so blurred between work and personal life, right? And so employees that work from home actually sometimes tend to receive less feedback, and they actually need just as much, if not more. And their boundaries might be less clear, so regular check-ins become even more important for remote workers. And then workplace wellness initiatives. Employee wellness programs that are tailored specifically to not just to nonprofits, but to the individual organization, I think can really enhance employee well-being, improve retention, increase the organization's ability to meet vision and or mission and vision. And so here's just a few examples. I mean, there's numerous types of initiatives that organizations can put in place, but here are a few. And I think it's always important to start with an organizational assessment and some employee surveys, because, for example, I know of a nonprofit who put some things into place, but it wasn't what the employees wanted. And so you want the employees to be engaged and feel like what you're doing is making a difference for them. So you want to get their input before you put something in place. And even having an employee wellness committee, if you're a large enough organization, I think can be really helpful. Again, going back to the importance of mental health, having those types of benefits, whether it's through an EAP or something else, through the regular health insurance. Financial wellness workshops are really high priority these days. A lot of workers are wanting more information on financial literacy or financial wellness. And then other examples could be on-site health screenings, on-site fitness classes, and for those who are trying to get their employees back on site, the fitness classes, whether it's yoga or Zumba or something like that, can be an incentive for them to come into the office more. Fitness challenges like step challenges, gym membership discounts, having healthy food options during meetings or events. Alex, I know you're going to love this one, a relaxation or a nap room. Especially if there are more employees working from home and some of the space is no longer being utilized, well, turn that into a relaxation or a nap room. Accessible safe stairwells so that people can, take the stairs to increase their steps or physical activity if they choose to. Because if it's not accessible or safe, well, then they're not able to do that or may not feel safe doing it. And so with that, I want to share a little bit more about how I can help. I am available to do organizational wellness assessments, to work with you, I should say, in partnership to create one and implement one, to assist in developing a workplace wellness program that's tailored to your organization and staff's needs. I have the technology to be able to offer team challenges, which can include nutrition and fitness tracking through an app that includes a heart rate device. I also offer one-on-one employee coaching, and I offer a number of different workshops on the topics that you see here: stress management, preventing compassion fatigue and burnout, mindfulness and emotional intelligence, work-life harmony, setting healthy boundaries, and healthy lifestyle habits related to eating, exercise, and sleep. So I know I've been talking really fast because I'm running out of time, but now in the last minute, I'd love to hear your key takeaways from today. And here's my contact information should you want to reach out either by phone or email. But please let me know what your key takeaways are or any questions that you might have.